Hi, everyone. Welcome into this virtual space yet again. Welcome to the 2021 Montana Book Festival. As you can see, it is taking place virtually again this year. This event and all our events are proudly sponsored by Arts Missoula and the Whitefish Review. My name is Lauren Korn. I am the director of the Montana Book Festival. I am thrilled to be here with you, our audience today, as well as with Aspen Decker, who will be welcoming you into our festival spaces by presenting our Territorial Acknowledgement. I'll be asking Aspen a few questions after that too, so do stay tuned for that as well. We're allotting about 30 minutes for this event, so I'm just gonna get on with it and introduce Aspen Decker. Aspen Decker is a proud member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. Currently, she is an MA student in linguistics at the University of Montana. She earned a BA in Tribal Historic Preservation from Salish Kootenai College. Aspen is a Salish language instructor at Salish Kootenai College. She is one of the last 17 fluent Salish speakers left today, and she speaks only Salish to her 4 children and raising first language speakers of Salish. Aspen was recently awarded a grant from the Endangered Language Fund, ELF, for her project Revive Our Roots. It's a language project for creating a seasonal curriculum that teaches Indigenous knowledge and Salish epistemology together with the Salish language. Aspen, welcome to the Montana Book Festival.
Hello, everyone, and I'm actually no longer a SKC faculty or adjunct. I'm now working for the University of Montana as the Native Community and Education Coordinator. So yeah, I'll get started on the land acknowledgement. Thank you all for attending this. Out and fluid at Ayakan she udlachs. At Ayakan skustud mesud latuk. Luna abs hui malkus flut open as it opened can spent. A sheet so yappy lust hui hui. Stab me slow skadleus kustud in mesud latuk. Tamashe hamsted ud at ayakan ab isits kustudler in saicht. Slut abenst kan as gaetnum in qaqain as tsl open as tsl spament ud mint flus uyapi sochish kaimin slut at ayakan idlemichum. Suyab each flu at ayakan. What a syntax imsham such a sits kadlihudlachs. Stamped up some flu at ayakan hult as huihuj skadlich she udlachs to suyabi. Catched flus kadlich to suyabi. Isn't act a studlichs. Lutz sip ut achum, lus catlichst dam. We shed just in zots, lus catlich and what wheel is the suyabi. And put it at la air, ich haslut at ayakan. Lut yes, milk catlich hoodlachs. Quedlements out and fluid at ayakan she udlachs. Isha as in taxi, cus al qshil flu skadlichs to welsh. Kudli shab ud flu skadlich idlin sai. English translation of this land acknowledgement is the Montana Book Festival acknowledges that we're on the Aboriginal territory of the Salish and Kalispel people. The name Missoula came from the Bitterroot Salish word in Mesudlatuk, which means the place of the freezing water. And this name has been used for over 12,000 years since the existence of glacial Lake Missoula. The first Europeans that came here borrowed the Salish term in Mesudlatuk, and it's also in Mesudla, so you could hear kind of this resemblance of Missoula, which was modified to Missoula. And later, the glacial Lake Missoula melted, and the Bitterroot Salish began using an additional term called Inlaicht, which means the place of the small bull trout. In 1855, the Bitterroot Salish were forced to sign the Hellgate Treaty. Following this treaty, the United States government carried out forced assimilation, removal, and genocide against the Salish and other peoples, other indigenous peoples, in their efforts to acquire land. Yet, despite centuries of colonial theft and oppression, the Ta'ayaqan people are still here and thriving on their Aboriginal lands. The Montana Book Festival strives and will continue to strive to help promote Indigenous voices, and as one of the ways to acknowledge and respect the Aboriginal peoples of Missoula.
Thank you so much, Aspen. I so appreciate, and the Montana Book Festival so appreciates the work you did for us to create that acknowledgement. So your bio, which I obviously need to update, so sorry about that. I will do that soon. But your bio states that you're one of 17 first language speakers of Salish. Where did you learn Salish, and did that come from your parents? How did you become fluent in the language?
Yeah, the bio that you ended up using was actually a few years old, and we actually lost some speakers, so it's down to like 13 fluent elder speakers, and then there's me and my children. But yeah, I first started learning Salish when I was, I guess growing up. I had like the basic Salish because my great aunts were fluent speakers. So I like heard, the articulation of my language. And so just kind of being raised around it, I think it helped. So when I went to our immersion school at the age of 13, in Kosam, I learned from one of my late elders, Patalik Papier. And so he was the one that helped me get fluent. And I think that it just came pretty naturally to me because I was still sort of at that almost first language speaker, because it's like 13 and under. And so I kind of had, that upbringing in it. And then having him just using this Indian sign language, it really helped. So I could understand, these gaps that I didn't know at the time. And that helped me to get fluent within, a few months, at least to get like conversational. And then it just kept adding from there. So yeah, ever since then, that's kind of where my passion has shifted, because the first day that I was at Nkosam, I wanted to go back to like public schools because there wasn't sports there, or very many of my own peers. But then he ended up talking about the importance of language and how there's not very many speakers left, especially young, youth trying to learn. And so everything that he said that day, it just really shaped what I wanted to do, and, perpetuating and revitalizing my language. So ever since then, that's where all of my career goals, my education has all been shifted towards language revitalization.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that project that you're working on, Revive Our Roots, and the other language reclamation projects that you're a part of?
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually in the master's linguistics program here at the University of Montana. I'm in my final semester. And so I wrote this grant a couple years ago, at the beginning, almost 2 years ago now. And it was to work on this curriculum that's based around a seasonal round, or so like our cultural seasonal events, pretty much for like Salish people. I think it's really important that we teach this, because it really encompasses our entire culture, our worldview, our language, like everything is just, is in the seasonal round is what we call it. And so I think it's important that our children and new learners of the language are learning in this way, because it does have that cultural component. And so you're not removing this integral information that is, embedded in what we do. So that's where I wanted to work on this project that I named to revive our roots, because there's no curriculum out there right now that is just based around kind of our cultural knowledge like that. It's very Western based. So I thought it was important to create this curriculum, and it's really just the start of the curriculum. I have a lot of like the games, the vocabulary games that are going to be a published little book at the end of this year. So yeah, it's just kind of the start of my curriculum, and I'm planning to continue with that and hopefully have something that's just very tangible and, an entire curriculum that encompasses what we do, what we gather, kind of just everything that's embedded in our culture.
Where can folks find copies of this book? Is it going to be solely in schools, or is it going to be available for anyone who is interested in this language learning?
Yeah, it should be available to anybody on the Endangered Language Fund, which should be out by maybe next year. I'm sure that it'll be like uploaded to their, I think they have on their website, there's like a language materials. And so you'll end up like seeing kind of what's out there from all these other language projects. So you'll end up seeing the Salish, you'll probably be able to find it based on like a Montana Salish tribe, and then there'll be that book linked.
Oh, wonderful. Congratulations on that. That's so exciting.
As
our audience here now knows, because they just heard you read it, the Montana Book Festival's Territorial Acknowledgements include a fair bit of history in them. What is the process like for you when you're asked to prepare a territorial acknowledgement? How do you decide what information goes into each one?
Yeah, I think what's really some of the most vital information is to include place names, because our place names, it had like this historical context. So like for the word for Missoula now, that inside the little bull trout, this is called little bull trout, like here in Missoula, kind of like right where we're at, like at the University of Montana. But then if you go to Bonner, just a ways down, the river, it's called Eichstam, which means the place of the bull trout. And so a lot of these place names tell you about what we were gathering or fishing or hunting in these locations, and even like the sizes of it. So we probably weren't fishing here in Missoula if they're just little inside, maybe there was bigger fish, but, it would seem that like down in Bonner would be like the ideal place to go spearfish. And then we have these other place names that like say a certain plant. It's saying like Stockholm, I think is a place name where it's like the place of wild carrots, So we kind of just name these places whatever we did in those locations. And so adding that information, especially about Glacial Lake Missoula, it really shows you this chronology of Salish people, because sometimes like they're discredited for like how long we've been here. It's like, oh yeah, the Indigenous people's been here for like hundreds of years. It's like, no, this has been like 12,000 plus years, since the last ice age. We have stories of when this lake was here in our oral storytelling, so like coyote stories. So this really just puts us in this place. So that's really important to add. And then even just talking about the history of Indigenous peoples, and so especially the Salish people, since this was our Aboriginal territory, it's like what went on here, and so including that, the Hellgate Treaty, that signing and everything that happened after that is really hard and sad history, but you have to include it because, it happened. So just saying, kind of this assimilation and genocide, there was a lot of really like hardships for the Salish people, and, being forcefully removed from the Bitterroot Valley and having to walk all the way to the Flathead Reservation. Yeah, it's sad. We have to add it. And then also saying, kind of this positive that the Salish people are still here and we're thriving. And it's true. We have a lot of these, our tribal members who are now attorneys, doctors. We have our own sovereign nation. So we really are thriving here. And it's a really great turnaround. And so it's just part of history. So it's important to include.
So as I said earlier, the Montana Book Festival is just one of many or a few organizations for which you have actually prepared to territorial acknowledgements. And one of the first conversations you and I had was about kind of the efficacy of acknowledgements. I don't even know if efficacy is the right word, but certainly their role or roles in event spaces like this one, on email signatures, just all of the many ways that acknowledgements now appear. Can you talk a little bit about what you see the role of a territorial acknowledgement being? And I guess I'm really interested in kind of where do we go from here? We have a territorial acknowledgement, and now what? And then what?
Yeah, so there's been a few people that approached me now about the land acknowledgement. And so I tried to look at like what their mission statement is, what they're trying to do with Indigenous peoples, and how they're going to show that they're actually acknowledging us here. And I think that's really important because you're not just, stating something written on the wall that's just like, these are the Indigenous peoples here. You're trying to state like, this is how we will contribute to helping these Indigenous people. And so that's where I added, this last part about the book festival, because it's true, you guys reached out to me. You want to include a lot more Indigenous voice in the book festival. That first plan was kind of like having more of an Indigenous peoples sort of day, at the beginning.
Mhm.
And so you're doing these things, the Montana Book Festival is doing things to help with promoting this Indigenous voice. And so it's very important to add that and to just continue to try to just include Indigenous peoples and maybe asking them what could we do to help Indigenous people, especially in whatever the field is or whatever you're specialized in. So, this book festival, poetry, I know that you guys have like a few different Indigenous authors, like that's great, just having them out there, a platform for them to showcase what they've done. So yeah, I think it's important to have these land acknowledgements because it really does make us feel more welcome.
Hmm.
Just a few years ago, there was hardly any Salish up at all around Missoula. And, kind of recently, just these little plaques, they mean a lot. Like you could see them at some of the kids' parks. What's it called? Karis Park. You could see this little Salish translation there. And where else? Like in Fort Missoula, where the Hellgate Treaty was kind of signed, there's now like a Salish walk, like where we planted some bitterroot, trying to have that regrowth of bitterroot because the Missoula Valley is where the Salish people dug bitterroot. Like that was our main thing that we did here. It was everywhere. We like camped out in Fort Missoula, kind of near Shopko, and like that whole area was like a place where we dug bitterroot. And same with like here near like the University of Montana. So it was just all over the place. The whole land was just covered in bitterroot. So yeah, just having these little plaques saying this is the history here, these are the Salish peoples here, it does mean a lot.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is that the acknowledgement is a big step, but that there has to be action that follows, right? So the Montana Book Festival is now implementing a land acknowledgement in its events and on its website. But we need to move forward and we need to include Indigenous voices with our programming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. For those who are watching right now, where are there perhaps online resources or otherwise where they can kind of see, where this education can happen? Where should they be looking for resources and what they can do to support the Salish tribes, but also the language reclamation that you're doing?
Yeah, so if you look on, these different a lot of different tribes have their like cultural committees. So for my tribe, we have the Salish and Kalispel Culture Committee and the Kootenai Culture Committee. And
Mhm.
so we have a website just for them. And if you Google search it, you'll see it. And they also have a lot of resources and like a language app. And then just even researching the local tribe Salish people, Bitterroot Salish or linguistic, we're known as the Montana Salish. You will see a lot of different articles pop up, like about our fire knowledge or our language. And so there's a lot of resources just by doing, some simple research. And you could also reach out to me I'm working here at the university, as I said. So a lot of my position is trying to help promote Indigenous voice. And so having a lot of these Indigenous initiatives. And so we're going to be having a few different events throughout this year,
Mm,
as well as the Native American Center. They have a lot of different events that are going on, throughout the year, and so they have a Native events calendar. So you could, I think, find that on Google or on the
yeah.
website. And so there's a lot of events that you could come to, and then meet a lot of these local Indigenous peoples, and just having conversations with them could really lead to, something that you're looking for your businesses that could, be some kind of collaboration.
I love that. I love the idea of collaboration. When I talk to people, I usually want to give them space to talk about something that I haven't myself brought up or asked them. So before we head out, I just want to give you that space. Is there anything that you want our audience to know? Point them in a direction. I would just love to give you that space to talk about what you want to talk about.
Yeah, I could also answer some questions if you guys have them,
Mm.
and that might lead me into, just other tangents too that might help.
Sure. If any of our audience members out there have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. Aspen can look at them there. Yeah, and Kate is our volunteer on the back end of things right now. Kate, feel free to throw some links in the chat, perhaps to the Native American Center, the Payne Native American Center on campus, for those event calendars. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I guess while I'm waiting for some of the questions, I could just kind
yeah,
of talk about even my work here at the University of Montana, just kind of promoting, my
yeah.
position.
Please do. Yeah.
And yeah, maybe I'll just kind of talk about, I'm working for the College of Arts and Media and the Montana Museum of Art and Culture. And we actually have this new building that's going to be built within the next couple of years, kind of where the Adams Center parking lot's at. Half of that's going to be for our new facility, and it's going to incorporate a lot of like Indigenous stuff. And so I'm really excited about it because it's going to have sort of Indigenous architecture in the way that it's faced to the east, kind of like our teepees were. And yeah, like the inside's kind of like circular in one of the areas. But yeah, I'll be translating all of the native plants that we're going to plant around the grounds. And then there's going to
Wow.
also be just like, this option to read these plaques. And so it's going to be really just this educational walk. If you like come there, you'll see like another land acknowledgement, and you could check out the collections. And we're going to have it pretty much be like a bilingual or multilingual facility where there's going to be like Salish translations everywhere, as well as including a lot of history and using like, I don't know if you know, not Martin Charlotte, I can't believe I forgot his name, Vic Charlotte,
Vic
he's
Charlotte, sure.
probably done some stuff for you guys.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have a couple of his poems on like a really big plaque in like, I think the front of the building. And so we're gonna translate it to Salish and English. We're gonna have Corky Claremont's artwork, and it's gonna be really cool. So I'm
That's
hoping
amazing.
a lot of different initiatives going on with you.
Yeah. What kind of timeline is that happening within?
I have 5 main initiatives for this year, and then I'm going to continue to add to it, especially once we get the new building. So some of them is like the language representation around campus, and so we're trying to work with different degree programs. So with like the linguist program, they said that they would help with like having their students do assignments for doing it on like Indigenous local tribes. And so we're going to start adding like language around campus and just trying to have more of that representation, as well as arts, and it just keeps going and going. So
Oh, that's so
yeah.
wonderful to hear. Yeah. Um, Emily or Amelie Burl is asking, what would you like to see more of in terms of Indigenous voices in publishing?
Yeah, it'd be great to just get more of it, because there are, I think, quite a few Indigenous peoples that just don't quite have maybe the platform to like really get their name out there and what they want published. But yeah, I think there just needs to be a lot more publishing of Indigenous peoples, and maybe allowing more things like this, the Montana Book Festival, or like other festivals where you're trying to have maybe just a certain time set aside for Indigenous peoples, because, you know, it just really gives them that time to talk about their work in the way that maybe they want to talk about it. Because sometimes things get muddled up where a lot of people jump in, you know, and then it ends up not really being about that person and what they were trying to get out or their voices, you know. So having that Indigenous, you know, day or like few hours set aside just for, you know, all these different authors, I think would be really cool.
Mhm. And I should mention for our audience, our viewers, that there is an Indigenous Authors Festival, an Indigenous festival in the works. It's I'm not sure what the name of it is at this point, but it is for solely Indigenous authors, poets, and I believe that the inaugural festival will be in 2022. So that's certainly something to look forward to. And I think the organizers are all maybe out of here in Missoula. So yeah, it's going to be a wonderful addition to the literary industry here in Missoula, but the literary communities here and in Montana at large.
Nice, that's great.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at the chat just to see if anyone else. Kate's been throwing some links in there. Oh, let's see. Okay, well, I think doesn't look like we have any other questions. So let's call it. Aspen, thank you so much for the work that you did for us here. For those of you who, you know, didn't glean this from our conversation, I reached out to Aspen and asked her to create a land acknowledgement from our mission statement, basically. And like I said earlier, it's going to be on our website. Aspen is actually going to record something separate so that we'll actually have her voice speaking those Salish words on the website soon as well. So again, Aspen, thank you so much for being here today and for the work you did for our acknowledgement. I, on behalf of the Montana Book Festival, are so grateful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Everyone, there's an event coming up at 1. I hope you guys will register and join us for that event. It's called Mining Violence, Voices or Writing the American West. And again, welcome to the 2021 Montana Book Festival. We're so grateful to have everyone zooming in, and see you during the next event.